Hi, I'm Tandy Hayes, and welcome to our Relatable Finance series, brought to you by Regions Bank. In each of our series, we'll be talking with influencers to make money conversations real, simple, and useful. So let's dig in. Welcome, Davy. I know you wear a lot of hats: middle school history teacher, content creator, and financial educator. Can you share with us how your journey towards financial freedom began?
Yeah, of course, Tandy. So my parents immigrated in the 90s from Cambodia. So I was born in the 90s in California, and we grew up pretty poor, but I never felt that way because growing up, they gave me my basic needs and I felt very loved. They taught me a lot of basic foundational finance principles, such as saving money, never carrying debt if you don't ever have to, except if you want to buy a house. That's always the only exception for some reason. I think it's because it goes back to the American dream. And also, they've
Right.
instilled a lot of hard work for me too. So I carried that with me throughout high school and college. I applied to FAFSA, the Federal Assistance Program for college, and I
Right.
got my undergrad paid for. I also worked my way through college and my master's, and I applied to over 40 scholarships and was able to pay off my entire teaching credential program and my master's.
Wow. When we spoke previously, you mentioned that it was a class assignment that first made you think about retirement. What was it about that project specifically that sparked your interest in long-term financial planning?
Yeah, this was the turning point for me. I was a student teacher for a 12th grade political science class, and I'm so grateful. My master teacher did a controversial issue project, and one of the topics was Social Security. Historically, Social Security was created in the 50s when the ratio for worker to retiree was 16 to 1, but it's projected in 2030 to be 2 to 1. So it's kind of
Wow.
scary. Like, how is Social Security going to survive? So the two main ideas were either you increase retirement age, which nobody wants to do, or you increase
Right.
taxes, which nobody else wants to do. So that really got me thinking, how am I going to retire? Will I have enough money? When do I start investing or saving for that? So it really got me thinking about retirement. And ever since then, I've been hooked on finances.
So I know, again, when we were preparing for our talk today, that you mentioned you've worked several jobs and a lot of them multiple at a time, right? Very early on.
Yeah.
What was really driving you during that time to not only work multiple jobs, but to stay focused on your plan and your savings?
Yeah, I think about that a lot. So for me, I'm like, was I just hustling to hustle? Because I was working three jobs at one point in my early 20s. I was a tutor, a math tutor for a different company, and also a caterer for a fine catering company as well. And I think for me, what I think my main motives was one, I grew up in a refugee family. Grew up really poor, and I wanted to make something of myself and for my family as well, and bring financial stability. But I think another motive was a more logical one. I loved going on YouTube and reading about money and finances, and I knew that my the worth or the value of my dollar in my 20s was much stronger than the value of a dollar in my 40s or 50s. And I figured in my 20s, I have a lot of energy, as you saw, right, with my three jobs. So I figured this is the time to leverage my energy, age, and the value of the dollar in that time of my life.
Yeah, I wish in my 20s I had been a little bit more committed, a little bit more focused like you were, right? At some point in time, I had two or three jobs, but it was more to really pay my bills, but also to finance
Mhm.
my, wanting to go out with my friends and have fun and go out to dinner. So I wish I had had someone like you to sort of influence me, right? So in my 20s, that was before the internet. So we didn't have that opportunity to go and find information like we do today, either through social media or through the internet. So when you think about your content and the people that find you online and what you are providing, how do you find success in when you communicate to your followers in the content that create? What does success look like for you?
Success looks like a lot of different things to people. So, how I kind of ground success is really, have you committed the goals that you set out? And are you happy with your relationships as well? So, for myself, I usually talk more about like saving and investing and like financial freedom, like retiring early at 45. And I know that's not as relatable, it's more aspirational. So, for me, I tell people, please start saving $5 or $20 to your goal. And I want to be more down to earth and relatable that way because that's how we started off, right? And I find that if you set a goal and you show up for yourself, that's success. You don't have to be a millionaire to be successful. And besides having money, I found that people with money can be miserable. So in the pursuit of my wealth, I was kind of finding I was overworking myself. And what's the whole point? It's to spend time with family, to my partner, in my community. So I think the two main ways of success is showing up for yourself and your goals, and also having healthy and successful relationships with not only with other people, but also with yourself.
Yeah, I love those 2 points of success, right? What am I setting as my goal, right? What does that look like for me as an individual? Because we all have different, to your point, we all have different definitions of success, but are we also keeping our relationships healthy? I look at my grandfather, and he was part of the greatest generation. And for him, success was working all day, every day. And he was very successful in what he did, but it did come at the sacrifice of his other relationships, because he was always at work and he was an entrepreneur. He owned his own businesses. But he, at one point, became so involved in that he sort of, sacrificed relationships with my grandmother and his children and grandchildren. So I think it's very important. What are your goals? And then how do I keep my relationship successful? One of the things I know that you focus on is consistency, that being ready to save isn't a feeling, right? Because we may never get that feeling, but it's more of a decision. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that means for people who keep waiting to start, right? Who keep waiting for that feeling to happen?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, including myself, we wait for the perfect moment to start saving. And for example, if I have a higher income, or if I pay off my debt, or if I make a certain amount, right? But it's like going to the gym. If we're waiting for motivation, it's never going to happen. We're going to wait for years. So I tell my followers that feeling ready is not a feeling, is a decision. I think people wait to start a goal because they're fearful or they're overwhelmed. So I say you need to break down that goal, right? So for example, if you want to save $1,000 for a vacation, then the $1,000 is actually pretty intimidating. So if we break it down, say if you work really early and like backwards engineer, if you have 10 months to save up for that $1,000, that's $100 a month. I get paid once a month, but I know most people get paid every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, you just gotta save $50, whether that's like eating out less, or you make more money, or pick up a side hustle. So I think it's less fearful, and we have to start small. This analogy is really funny. If you want to start something, you set a super tiny goal. It is so ridiculous, you have to do it. For example, if I'm in a reading slump and I want to read a book, I don't tell myself I'm going to read a chapter. I'm going to read a sentence, only one sentence from the book. I read the sentence, like I have to read the rest, right? So it's like if you have a saving goal, let's say you save $5, you're like, well, I can find another $5 around the house. So I think that's what I would tell people.
Yeah, it's sort of like that. You said that motivation to go to the gym, right? I always have those days like, oh, I don't want to go today. It's been a long day. If I can make myself change my clothes, right? Once I put on my gym clothes, then I'm like, oh, well, I'm ready now, so I've got to go, right? So yeah, in thinking about this moment of overwhelm, a sense of overwhelming, and being intimidated, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you see, and how do you help your followers really overcome that?
One of the biggest misconceptions that people have around finances is that they don't have enough money to start. I think they see other people who are wealthy or have reached these financial goals. They don't identify with them. I'm not that person. I'm not a saver. And I think what the words we tell ourselves are really important. So like I said, just starting off small and starting with $5. I think momentum is more important than a bigger goal. So starting off small will actually lead you to bigger action. So I see this in my students. Once students do one assignment and they see their grade go up, they feel really motivated to continue and to do more assignments to get their grades up. So I feel that's the same way. You don't have to be a straight A student. So some people don't identify that way. So I think just identifying I'm not a saver yet, or I want to be a saver, because identity really impacts how people see themselves and their actions too.
Yeah, we see the same thing, when we're working with customers from a banking perspective. They think they have to come in and put $100 a month or $200 or $500 a month into a savings or an investment, and getting them to understand, to your point, let's start with $5, right? And once you start seeing that balance grow, then, oh, wow, look what's happening. And then they get more excited and they want to find more ways to put money towards their goal, right? So
Absolutely.
let's wrap back around to your start. So when you think about your savings journey and how you started, what mistakes did you learn from, and then how did that help you approach your strategy differently?
Yeah, so I was a really good saver. My family always taught me just to put it away, and I wasn't a big spender, but I was really bad at managing my money, even though I'm good at it now. But because I didn't have a system or a budget, my money would just kind of like all over the place. For example, I would mix in my savings with my checking money. So instead of opening a separate savings account, I just had it all in my checking account. And mentally, I would just keep track of it in my head. Okay, I have 500. If I had $2,000 in my checking account, I said, okay, 500 is towards saving. And then I would just, whenever I spend money, I'm like, all right, there's still 500 in there. So it became really bad because at one point, I was taking money from my savings. Like my cash flow was not good. So the lesson I learned from that was like what doesn't get measured doesn't get managed. So I had to tell myself, Davi, you have to open a separate savings account. And even within that savings account, you need to have different saving goals and saving buckets if the bank allows that.
So I want to go back to what you just said. What doesn't get what? What was your phrase?
What doesn't get measured doesn't get managed.
I love that, right?
Mhm.
I had some of the same issues and I kind of took the same approach that you did, right? I had everything in one account and then like, oh, well, I want to spend this extra $20. It's there, right? I want to spend this extra $10. Oh, it's there, right? And I have to
Mhm.
make things out of sight, out of mind because it's kind of that whole thing of it's burning a hole in my pocket because I can see it. So, Davi, there is so much financial information online, right? Through social media, just through, Google search. Some of it great, some of it not so much. How do you help your followers tell the difference between credible guidance and misinformation?
I think people should really ask whenever they watch a finance video, are they trying to teach me something or are they trying to sell me something? What is the objective
Good
of this
point.
video? Yeah, because most of the time, let's be real, finance is boring, okay? Like budgeting, 50-30-20 rule, investing is really boring and actually really repetitive at the end of the day. So I feel like for the most part, if they're trying to teach you something, the information is pretty simple and plain. And then if they're trying to sell you something, they might try to invoke emotion from you, whether it's like, you need to buy this now, it's gonna go away in 24 hours, or if it's like sensationalized, like a meme coin, you know? So I think they have to really look at their motive that way. But also, secondly, they need to corroborate their sources. So, meaning if an influencer, a finance influencer tells you about this 50-30-20 method of budgeting, then you should look it up and see if that's being said on NerdWallet or Investopedia, or if they're talking about taxes, maybe you should check the sources of the IRS, or see if other finance outlets are saying this as well. So I think that's when I know, okay, if multiple credible sources are talking about this type of saving or investing goal or strategy, then that's when I kind of realize, okay, this looks credible, or this actually does not look credible. I've never heard of this before.
So, I love your passion, right? Your energy when it comes to the content that you create. So, when you think about financial topics or feeling empowered financially, what are you most passionate about when it comes to the financial topics that you share?
For me, I'm really passionate about teaching people financial literacy, whether it's budgeting, saving, credit cards, or investing. Because to me, growing up, I never had that. I know the school systems are getting better. They are passing legislation to mandate financial literacy, but growing up, this is like for my first gen people, my low income people who grew up and didn't have these resources. I really resonate with people who looked like me or were in my similar predicament. And I feel like I learned a lot from that. I think representation really matters. So not only showing financial literacy, but also just knowing that money is a tool. It's funny, Tandy, like growing up, I thought money was evil. I think we get a lot of money scripts, especially like, rich people are evil. And it's like so irrational. So for me, I was scared to build wealth. I was like, I don't want to be evil. Like, I don't want to be a rich millionaire who like exploits people. But I think I learned that's so irrational. It doesn't make sense. Like money is an inanimate object. It's what you do
Right,
with it,
right,
right? You can be a rich person and be
right.
super generous. So I think at the end of the day, I want people to know money is a tool, and you can use it to leverage to make your life easier, to bring more abundance to your community, and to yourself.
So going back to your phrase, money is a tool, right? And as you said, it's not something to fear, right? We see it used in different and sometimes bad ways, right? But it is, to your point, what do you do with it? How did shifting your mindset about money change the way you live and plan for your future?
Yeah, this took a lot of work, but back to like when I thought money was evil, I had a lot of limiting beliefs, like I don't deserve wealth, I don't know how to budget, or people like me don't do this. So it took a lot of reading books. It took even therapy, to be honest, because I saved so much money. I was taught as in an immigrant family to save money and not spend unless you need to. I had to train and reprogram my mind to know I'm deserving of money. I can save and invest, but I'm worthy to spend money on myself. So I feel like once I reworked my mind, I told myself anything's possible and I'm deserving of anything that comes into my life. So that was a huge transformation that led me to where I'm at now.
Yeah, so my great grandfather had a saying, it's one thing to spend money, it's another thing to waste money, right? And so I think
Mm-hmm.
going back to where we started our conversation, it's so important to have those goals. What are those things that you're saving for? What are those things that you do want to spend money on, right? And that you're not wasting or blowing money, but you're
Yeah.
spending it wisely, right? You're spending it on things that you focused on, that you want or that you need to in your everyday life or to expand your life. So you emphasize the importance of having a plan. What does creating a realistic financial plan look like for someone who is just starting out?
Yes. So back to the quote, like what doesn't get measured doesn't get managed. So I think number one, you have to figure out how much money you're making. It's funny, my cousin and I, we were just talking about last week. She's a pharmacist and she's like, I have never looked at my pay stub. I'm like, girl, everyone, look at your pay stub. You need to know how much money you're making before taxes and after taxes. That's number one, right? How much money you're making. And then number two is the opposite. How much money are you spending? Like your expenses, like your monthly fixed expenses, like your rent, your utilities, groceries, things like that. So I think getting really clear, having clarity on how much money you bring and then how much money you spend. And then with the rest, like we talked about, like you can spend on yourself, you can save or you can invest that money. So starting off with a roadmap of having, and then after that, you need to have a plan. So with the leftover money you have, having a simple budget template on Excel or Google Sheets is super helpful, and seeing how much money you want to allocate towards fun, entertainment, eating out, and things like that. It's super helpful. And honestly, if people just track their money every single day and make it a habit, it'll change their life. It's funny, like Tanya, you and I were talking about like sometimes when we're spending money, like, we don't want to look at our checking account or we don't want to look at our credit account, but it's ironic. It actually makes it worse. So just facing your fears and just looking at your numbers will really do wonders for your finances.
Yeah, I think having that budget, like you said, right, knowing what not only am I making, but what am I bringing home? What are those set expenditures, right? My rent, my mortgage, whatever it is, right? My monthly expenses, and then that leftover, to use your term, doesn't just become expendable income, right? How am I using it to change my life? And as you said, have a plan and a goal and start saving for that. So, Davi, let's sort of put a bow on things. And what I'd like to do is, what is that one thing, if you think about your content and your followers and how you help get them started and get them motivated, what is that one last thing that you would want to share from your perspective on just wrapping all of this up in a nice package?
One thing I love to leave off for everybody is I was actually a psychology major in college, but I think this applies to life. And if you want to be successful or happy, is that how you talk to yourself is really important. It's called self talk. And growing up, I was so hard on myself, but the kinder I was to myself, the happier I was. So, and I think the last thing is you need to really be careful on the language you speak to yourself. So, for example, I've had a lot of limiting beliefs like, I grew up poor, money is evil, I can't do this. Like, people like me are not investing or saving money to this degree. So, it's really important that you actually change the way you talk about yourself, because that actually influences and changes your behavior and actions, either for the worse or for the better.
Yeah, my mom always said, can't never could and won't never will, right? If I
Can't
can't
never
do it, I'm
could,
never going
won't
to,
never will.
right?
Mhm.
So, Dobby, thank you so much for spending time with us today, and continued success on your content and your followers, but most importantly, reaching your goals, right, and continuing to grow your wealth. So, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. It was such an honor.